it's Marley from the Energy Boutique with a brand new episode of ASTRO CLASS. So welcome back to ASTRO CLASS. Of course, we have been diving into the bare necessities, the bare basics of astrology over the last couple of weeks. And we tried to put the pieces together there last week to examine some charts and see where that full moon in Libra was taking place and how it affects different areas of the chart and the houses and what that would mean for different people depending on where that full moon actually landed in their chart. Now, I will say some of the feedback that I got was kind of stating that it was overwhelming. I know a lot of people get kind of very overwhelmed when it comes to astrology, but and I know there's a lot to it. But my goal is to break it down into small, manageable pieces. And today's episode, I actually want to show you what we can really understand from just looking at the chart, not understanding signs, not understanding placements, not understanding degrees and houses. We don't need to know any of that. We can just take a look at a chart, at the pattern of the planetary placements, and really kind of, I'm going to say, understand a lot more about the person that we're currently looking at. So you may recognize the zodiac wheel currently on your screen. Of course, we've kind of jumped into exploring what houses are like in rulerships and the zodiac energies and what that may mean, and the different topics and themes that, of course, each house actually rules over. This, I understand, can be a lot to remember. It can be overwhelming for a beginner. I get that. So today, we're actually going to strip all of this away. And what we're left with is just this general zodiac wheel. And of course, we are using a whole house system, which basically means that all of the lines here that kind of indicate the boundaries of the houses, they're all equal, right? This is a perfect pizza, a perfect pie that was cut into perfect slices, perfect pieces. However, I know there's very rarely do we ever see a chart that embodies the whole house system. We use what is called the Placidus system here in Western astrology, and that's why you see when you look at your chart that the pieces of pizza or pieces of pie, whichever you prefer, they're not cut evenly at all. And that is an indicator of the degrees and the signs of your particular house system. We're not dealing with that today. We will probably take what we're learning here today and apply it to charts in another episode. But today we just want to focus on recognizing patterns. So I want you to get your chart in front of you, and we want to kind of understand where the layout of some of these planetary placements are and what that could indicate as far as personality types, focuses go, missions go, because we all have a lot of missions, a lot of soul contracts that we're carrying out in this lifetime. And I just wanted to kind of show you that we don't have to get that deep into astrology in order to learn about ourselves. So the very first chart that we're actually going to take a look at, the patterns, if you will, we're going to take a look at this particular pattern. Now, this is called the splash, and you will see that, we have a planet here, we have a planet here, we take it all through this way, and then we have a consecutive kind of order of planets on this side as well. So I did not name these, so don't come at me if you think that they're ridiculous, because I actually do think that somebody could have named them better. But the concept behind the splash is that if you threw a rock into a puddle, that you would have an evenly dispersed ripple effect, if you will. This is kind of where the concept of the splash comes from. So what I want you to notice is that in this particular chart, all the planets, and again, these pink dots I'm using as planets, they're all kind of scattered over the chart. And of course, we know that there's 12 houses, so there's 12 sections in a chart. And when you have all of these planets kind of spread out like this evenly, It means that this particular person will likely have a lot of interests in life, kind of being pulled in all different directions at one point in time in their life. So this could be, educational studies. This could be just hobbies. This could just be phases of interests. But basically, this particular person is going to kind of follow all of the different planetary placements throughout their life and kind of explore different matters of life, if you will. And so what we end up with is a very well-rounded, cultured type of person who becomes very, very efficient, or should I say proficient, in all these different areas of interest. Now, when looking at your chart, they don't have to be in all these houses. So this one doesn't have to be here. These two don't have to be here. You could definitely see a shifting of this chart. But basically, what you want to focus on is the fact that the pebble that we're throwing into the pond right here, it has a splash effect, and that it is evenly spread out over the zodiac wheel. So this is, I guess, why they called it the splash, which I guess is a very creative solution. But we just want to take a look at how the planets are dispersed throughout this particular chart pattern and what this may mean as far as personalities and areas of focus go. So the next pattern that we're going to take a look at, they have cleverly called the splay. Okay, so first we have the splash, now we have the splay. So of course, this chart is kind of similar to the one we just looked at, to the splash, if you will. However, the difference is that in this particular pattern, we have at least one stellium in the chart. So what is a stellium, you may ask? A stellium is 3 or more planets. So 3 plus planets, okay? Either in a host or in energy. So I know I removed the zodiac signs from this wheel because I didn't want it to confuse everyone. But let's just say, for instance, that this house over here is Aries energy, okay? So we would have 3 planets in Aries stellium, okay? And then over here, we would look at the house. We have a 7th house stellium. And of course, down here, a 3rd house stellium. So of course, you don't need 2 stelliums going on in your chart. All we need is 1 stellium to be in existence in order to make this a splay over a splash. So a splay chart, a splay person, is someone who is very unique, very stuck in their own individual ways, and kind of resists or refuses to be controlled or pushed or under the governship, let's say, of other people's rules, other people's religion, other people's systems. We don't like that. We want to kind of stand out here. This is what these stelliums are. Build up of energy, right? Which means that we're standing away from the crowd. This particular person would likely have a little bit more pull to the stellium energies. So let's just say that this was an Aries ruled house. We would definitely see that this particular person would embody dominant qualities and traits of Aries energy. And let's just say over here in the 7th house, and we examine the 7th house, this person's stellium is likely going to have them really focused on one-on-one relationships, one-on-one partnerships, if you will, just because we know that that 7th house rules over those topics and themes. What this is going to kind of do to this individual is, compared to the splash, where we have, kind of spread out interests, spread out hobbies, topics and themes that we throw ourselves in through different chapters of our lives to really become as knowledgeable about those areas as possible. This particular chart person would have a very unique, very unusual type of draw to these particular areas of interest. And we would certainly assume that these particular individuals would kind of dance to the beat of their own drum. We don't like to kind of allow other people to take the lead with these particular planetary placements, with this particular pattern. We're sure as much being a leader, we are not being a follower with this type of distribution of these planetary energies in the chart. So the next type of chart that we are going to take a look at, this particular pattern is called the bundle. And I guess we could see why. They're all bundled together. Now again, they don't have to be in these particular houses, in this particular area of the chart. We could see it, moved over this way. We could see it at the bottom of the chart. We could see it over here. It doesn't necessarily have to be in these placements. What's important is the element that they're all in consecutive houses. They're all connected. They're all in a row. So we want to understand that they're closely pushed together. They're bundled together. And we are covering very few signs. So again, I know I removed the signs from the zodiac wheel to eliminate confusion. But let's just understand that this would be a grouping of consecutive signs, whichever way you find this in the chart. So what we can kind of assume from this is that, first of all, very rarely do we see this pattern take place in a chart. So out of all the 7 patterns that we're going to explore here today, this is probably the rarest one. And what we have to kind of understand is that this is going to make this particular individual somebody who is a specialist in the area in which they pour their time, energy, and focus. This is someone who is going to see their work, their relationships, their hobbies, any kind of interest revolve around one topic, one theme, one point of view, being very one-sided, right? It's not hard to see that they're all bundled together, they're all grouped together. So they're very one-sided on a point of view, on a perspective, on a topic, on a theme. So if you find that you actually have this pattern in your chart, you're likely an expert at something. And of course, that something we can kind of whittle down to the energies that this particular pattern covers, the house that this particular pattern covers, in order to figure out what a person is an expert at or, fluent in. And we can really see that this particular pattern is going to be someone who really needs to apply themselves to one area, one subject, one topic, one theme, and becoming a true expert at it. So the next pattern we're going to look at is called the locomotive. So I want you to think of train. And the reason why we are thinking of train is because this is essentially a choo-choo train. I want you to take a look. We want to recognize that we want to go clockwise in identifying who the leader is. So the leader would essentially be this particular planetary placement here. So you'll notice that this particular pattern, it does range over all the signs, except for, of course, these two, but the majority of signs, let's say. And we want to kind of understand that this is the dominant feature. So whatever house or sign this actually ended up in, this is going to be a true indicator on where it is that this particular person has a lot of strength, has a lot of energy. This essential leader, if you will, taking the train on this clockwise position, is leading the energy, stacking the energy up in all of these other houses. So before you say, okay, well, what's the difference between a bundle and a locomotive? The bundle had multiple planets kind of grouped together. So we seen two, let me go back here. Let me go back. The bundle pattern had 2 placements, 3 placements, 2 placements, 2 placements. they're kind of grouped together more. We've seen, 2 or 3 planets grouped together in a house or in a sign. However, when we go back to looking at the locomotive, we see that everything is kind of spread out a little bit better, right? For the most part, we only have 1 planet in each, house or sign. We may have a bundle of 2, but for the most part, they're spread out individually and equally, making this guy the leader of this particular train. So a person with this type of pattern in their chart is likely going to really take a look at their life, at their goals, at their problems, and they're going to have a whole lot of energy, a whole drive, a whole passion, a whole desire just to kind of attack. Again, we want to take a look at the leader of the train to see the energy, the house, in order to identify the qualities, the characteristics, the traits that we are going to kind of build up this energy and kind of attack things with. But because we have all of these planets in different energies, different houses, this means that this person would actually have a lot of resources at their disposal. So, when attacking problems, they're going full charged using the leader of the train to really kind of stack up all the energies behind it, pushing through those problems, pushing to really go after goals, dreams, visions. This is a dominant type of chart because we have the leader of this train and we have all of these energies supporting this dominant particular feature in going after life, in going after what we want, and going after really solving a lot of the problems. So this is going to show us, especially right here, what area of life this particular individual is strongest at. The next chart we are going to kind of take a look at, or pattern, should I say, is called the bull. Okay, so we could kind of understand if we turned this about 90 degrees, I would say, and we had all of these planets kind of at the bottom of this particular wheel, it would form a bowl-like structure. Bowls are meant to kind of hold things, to contain things. And again, they don't have to be on this side. It could be on this side. It could be at the top of the chart. It could be at the bottom of the chart. But the main focus is that all of these planets fall within 6 signs. Okay, so it's either going to go that way or that way, right? So it would shape a bowl. Regardless of how you look at it, it will shape a bowl when spread out over 6 consecutive signs. So this is like a half circle, okay? We want to understand that a bowl is usually a container, not always, but can be a container for liquids. When we talk about liquids, we talk about emotion. We talk about the water energies, which carry a lot of thoughtfulness, carry a lot of energy, a lot of intuition, a lot of emotion, period. Now, what we know about this particular, let's call it pattern, is that these are self-contained types of people. They learn from their experiences in life without, someone having to hold their hand. We would kind of gain rewards and profit from these experiences because we've absorbed the lessons from it. And this particular type of pattern would mean that the person is very forceful, very aggressive, very much able to stand on their own 2 feet. And of course, depending on whether this is at the top of the chart or the bottom of the chart, that would have a little bit of a different meaning as well. Same with if it was left side versus right side, this is going to be a little bit more revealing. And I want you to understand that astrology is one great big puzzle, and one puzzle piece kind of links into another puzzle piece and reveals certain clues about the personality. So if we were kind of looking at the left hand side as we're kind of using in this diagram, this particular person would definitely be a little bit more forceful as far as their identity goes and standing on their own 2 feet. If for some reason it was to the right, this is a force out into the world, really kind of rolling up their sleeves, going after what it is that they want and tapping into the resources out in the world. If these particular patterns were at the top of the chart, we would say that this person has a lot of intellectualisms to them, very airy, very much in the mental plane, very much, mentally stimulated, very much an educational person. While at the bottom of the chart would kind of indicate someone who is more hands-on, more connected to action than thought. So it can be a little bit, I'm going to say a little bit tricky to kind of find this particular pattern and then examine, where it kind of lies, like to the left, to the right, up or down. This is just a general pattern that, of course, will give us a hint or a clue on where it is that we need to kind of dive a little bit deeper in the area in which these planets are actually dispersed. So the next pattern we're going to take a look at is called the bucket. So this is kind of an interesting one. What we have to kind of understand, and again, it doesn't necessarily have to be in this shape. We could have the bulk of these energies, of course, on this side or, on this side, creating this particular single guy at the top or even over here. So I don't want you to get caught up on the fact that they don't actually have to be the exact same placements. But what makes this kind of pattern a little bit different is that we're looking at approximately 8 or 9, depending, planets all kind of grouped together with one lone wolf over here. This particular type of displacement, and of course, it doesn't have to be one. We could have 2. Okay, let's just clear that up. Doesn't necessarily have to be just one. Could be another dot over here. Could be in the same house or the same energy. Doesn't necessarily have to be just one. But typically speaking, we kind of see either, the bulk of the weight on one area with 8 planets and 2 over here, or 9 planets over here with 1 over here. I know that sounds confusing, but it's really not that difficult. What we have to understand about this particular chart is that this planet here, we're going to call the singleton, and this is going to form the handle of the bucket. With bucket people, we tend to see the kind of personality that has a single-minded focus or a single-minded goal or one mission, one purpose, if you will. And typically speaking, where we find this single or duo, but for this example, we're talking single, where we find this in the energy, in the house, this is the main focus of the person. This is the goal that they have to achieve. This is the mission that they're on. This is the direction that they have to take. And it is highly, highly likely that this is also the sole purpose, the sole mission in the soul contract of the individual. And, there's so many different layers to astrology, but when we start looking for missions, for purpose, for soul contracts, especially with this kind of shape chart, it's very easy to discern what the mission of the purpose needs to be in this lifetime just by identifying the singleton planet. We also need to kind of understand that, there are other elements such as your true node placement, your Chiron placement, your part of fortune, your vertex, all different kinds of astrology points within the patterns that our planets are dispersed in that lead us to kind of piece together the puzzle of what this particular person's soul mission would actually be. So the last particular pattern that we are going to look at is called the seesaw, for good reason. We have evenly distributed planets on this side that counterbalance the planets that are on this side. So again, we are seeing the axis kind of run through this particular way of the chart. But again, you might find that in your chart, it could be kind of looking like this. That's okay. We just kind of want to recognize where there's a grouping sitting across from another grouping. So we are recognizing that the group is all in consecutive signs versus all consecutive signs. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been exploring rulerships and sister signs and the axis of the chart and the wheel and what that actually means for our personality traits. Of course, I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. So we're just going to look at the distribution of the planets. What we have to kind of understand is that there are, well, let me remove this for a second because this will kind of confuse if I don't get rid of it. Let's kind of start with a clean slate. What's important about this particular pattern is that we're looking at empty spaces that, of course, separate the two groupings, if you will, of energies. And I've had a lot of questions over the last couple of weeks when we've been talking about the houses on, what does it mean when you have empty houses, and what does it mean when you have all these planets built up in one area, but then the other area of your chart is just empty and non-active. And of course, we will cover that when we get into the different planetary placements that could be grouped together in your chart, leaving empty spaces. But what I'd just like to kind of leave you with is that empty houses are just important as houses that have activity in them. We can learn a lot from the empty houses, and in a whole type of chart interpretation, I would say that the empty houses just aren't the main focus of the mission, of the purpose, of the soul contracts, of the topics and themes that an individual is here to explore. They still are very revealing. They still have a major impact on personality traits and, the direction that a particular person's life would take. They're just not as dominant of a life lesson that needs to be learned as planets that show up in houses. So in this particular pattern, what we kind of see here is that this person's able to see one side of a matter, two sides of a matter, very split, very divided. Someone that's able to kind of stand in these open spaces and see very clearly where these energies are supporting truth, mission, and purpose, and these energies are supporting a dualistic and polarized topic, theme, perspective, mission, purpose. What we like to see is that this individual is able to kind of see both sides of the coin and weigh the pros and cons and sort out the black from white and sit in the gray area when kind of moving through life and making their own decisions. And it can be very difficult to constantly be on the fence about things. Libran energies, I'm talking to you. But a person with this particular pattern is beautiful because they can see both sides of the coin. However, seeing both sides of the coin, walking the middle ground, really tapping into the common area of very polarized and dualistic perspectives can lead a person to not lean one way over the other, not fully embody one path over the other, not know what direction to take over the other. And so this particular pattern, although it is beautiful because it means that this individual has the ability to see both sides of the coin, both sides of life, and explore everything in between, usually leads to a state of paralysis because they're stuck in the middle. They don't know which way to go. They don't know which way to kind of take their thoughts, take their opinions, to aim for goals. And so it is a very difficult pattern to deal with, but also a very illuminating one too, because I think we've all kind of explored in life where it's very difficult to see where other people are coming from. This particular person having the seesaw pattern has no problem seeing where other people are coming from, where the choices, where the options are. But because, again, like I mentioned, it's such a polarized perspective, they get stuck in the middle, monkey in the middle. They're really not sure where to go, how to direct their energy, how to identify goals, dreams, visions, missions, and therefore kind of divided, if you will, on every single topic and theme, perspective, question, anything that comes up in life, they're really going to be feeling like they're torn in two. So that covers all 7 different patterns. I really, really hope that this was helpful. I really hope that you take the time, you take a look at your chart, and you kind of identify which pattern your chart represents the best. I want you to drop me a comment below. Let me know what kind of pattern you have identified your chart to be. And of course, if you're having a tough time, you want a little bit of assistance, or your chart is not really fitting into any of these patterns, drop me a line about that as well, and we'll work it out, and we'll pick one label that is, I'm going to say, more suitable for your chart over the other, so that you can kind of tap into where these particular patterns are really kind of molding your particular personality. So I'm going to draw the line here and leave this with y'all to kind of jump in and explore not only your chart, but other people's charts as well. Hopefully you can connect the dots and kind of see where it is that we don't necessarily have to get too far into astrology in order to find out hints and details about ourselves. So I will be expanding on this particular concept in our next episode, where I think we're going to explore the hemispheres of the chart, the different areas of the chart, and what the buildup of energies may mean for that particular person's personality. And then we're going to jump into actually looking at the planetary placements and the different types of combinations of energies and, of course, personality traits that having different planetary placements in these houses and in these energies would mean for an individual and, of course, in their chart. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you found this super entertaining, super helpful. And again, drop me a line below. Let me know what you learned about yourself according to the chart pattern that you are recognizing now that you know the 7 different patterns that we can use for personality traits within a chart. Sending you nothing but love. We'll talk to you soon.